Welcome to Vibe Talks. Today we're diving deep into a really disturbing story. Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker. We've got this transcript detailing his horrific crimes. And, well, our mission today is to unpack the key events. We want to try and understand the progression, without getting lost in the graphic details.
Right, focusing on the timeline, the escalation.
Exactly. The account starts way back with what seems like a really pivotal childhood experience and then follows his descent into just increasingly violent crime across California.
Yeah.
So we'll trace the key turning points, the investigation, the whole media frenzy, and how he was eventually caught. What mix of things could lead to such terror? Let's try and figure that out.
Okay, so the source material kicks off with his early life, and it's pretty unsettling. It highlights this exposure to extreme violence that seems pretty significant.
Okay.
It mentions when he was 12, Ramirez, or Ricardo, then his older cousin Mike, a Vietnam vet, showed him these gruesome photos and told war stories.
Wow, okay.
But the thing the transcript notes is that young Ricardo reacted with fascination, not the disgust you'd expect.
Fascination. That's a huge detail. You hear about how exposure to violence in those formative years can really impact empathy, right? And how kids see the world.
Yeah, definitely.
So fascination instead of revulsion. It could suggest maybe an early issue with processing that kind of stuff.
And it wasn't like a one-time thing. The transcript then talks about another event, maybe a year later. Same cousin Mike.
Oh, no.
Apparently, Mike murdered his wife right in front of Ricardo.
In front of him.
Yeah. And again, the account stresses Ricardo's fascination.
Wow. Two intense, violent events, back to back almost, with that reaction. I mean, what can we even draw from that?
Well, it's tough. We only have this account. It's possible a kid might mask fear or confusion with seeming interest. But repeated exposure like that, without the typical emotional response, it could suggest some kind of desensitization starting really young. It definitely raises questions about the long-term impact of seeing that kind of trauma.
So after these really disturbing early experiences, the transcript moves to his teenage years. And it paints a picture of increasing instability.
Right.
Talks about drug use, hallucinogens specifically, petty crime like shoplifting. He even had a brief interest in religion, then dropped out of high school.
Yeah, those seem like classic indicators maybe of someone struggling, moving away from, the usual path.
That feels like a key transition point.
It does. The drug use, especially hallucinogens, that can alter perception, lower inhibitions. Combine that with petty crime, dropping out. It suggests a growing disconnect.
Then at 17, he gets a job at a Holiday Inn, which unfortunately just becomes another place for escalation. The transcript says he started by stealing from guest rooms. Bad enough. But then he escalated to attempted sexual assault.
And that got him fired.
Right. And it's a really clear, disturbing shift towards much more serious, violent stuff.
Absolutely. Moving from theft to attempted sexual assault, that's a significant jump. It suggests a growing disregard for others, a dangerous path forming.
Okay, so fast forward about 5 years. He's 22 now. He moves from Texas to San Francisco, maybe looking for a fresh start.
Seems like it, but the details suggest things actually got worse.
How so?
Reportedly, he lived in squalor, totally neglecting hygiene, just eating junk food. It sounds like someone becoming really detached, maybe struggling with basic self-care.
Yeah, that paints a picture of someone kind of falling apart, a further decline.
It seems like it, a detachment from norms, maybe a deterioration in his psychological state.
And then, this is chilling. The transcript says after about 2 years like that, he suddenly decides, I'm going to start murdering people. It sounds like fun. Just like that. And his first murder, described as a 9-year-old girl he lured to a hotel basement.
Yeah.
It's just a horrific turning point.
The casualness of how that's presented, it sounds like fun. It's deeply disturbing. It just screams a lack of empathy, a terrifyingly warped view of life. And murdering a child, it's just unspeakable. Shows a capacity for extreme violence against the most vulnerable.
3 months later, he moves again. Los Angeles this time. Takes up residence in a Skid Row hotel.
Right.
And the account then just lays out this series of brutal attacks, one after another.
Getting worse.
Yeah. The murder and sexual assault of a 79-year-old woman. Then 9 months later, murdering a woman and a roommate. Then murdering another woman in a park. The frequency, the brutality, it's clearly ramping up.
That move to LA seems to coincide with a real acceleration in his killing, maybe growing bolder.
Could be.
The lack of a clear pattern in victims early on, at least in this account, might suggest just indiscriminate rage.
And then, 10 days after the Park murder, the transcript details this incredibly gruesome home invasion. He shot a sleeping man, then murdered the wife with a knife.
Yeah.
And sold her eyes as a souvenir.
That detail, taking the eyes, it's profoundly disturbing. It hints at a level of depravity, maybe a desire to possess or commemorate these acts in this uniquely awful way.
It's just, yeah.
And this fits the pattern, right? Breaking into homes at night, execution-style killings. This is when the Night Stalker name starts to fit. The transcript also mentions him drawing religious symbols.
Oh, yeah, the pentagrams and stuff.
Exactly, which adds another layer. Sometimes that can indicate, a warp to justification, a ritual, or maybe just trying to shock or confuse investigators. The source doesn't really elaborate, but it's there.
So as these awful crimes pile up, the police obviously start seeing a pattern. They realize they've likely got a serial killer on their hands.
Right.
But the transcript points out they had limited evidence, some descriptions, fingerprints, and this unique shoe print. Apparently only one pair of that brand and size sold in LA.
That detail, the shoe print, it really shows how important meticulous forensic work is. But yeah, at that stage, very little to go on. Huge challenge for the police.
And the media, naturally, goes wild, reporting widely, dubbing him the Night Stalker.
Which the transcript notes is maybe a bit sensational.
Yeah, a bit. But all that media coverage seems to have actually affected Ramirez.
You'd think so. The intense attention, while maybe helping generate leads, also probably put pressure on him, made him more aware he was being hunted.
So, feeling the heat, he apparently goes back to San Francisco.
Flees LA.
Right. And almost immediately commits another double murder, again leaving a religious symbol.
So that pretty much confirmed for the authorities, okay, the Night Stalker is likely here now.
Yeah, linking the crimes, solidifying the profile, serial killer, possible signature. That's when the San Francisco mayor, Dianne Feinstein, holds that press conference.
Ah, yeah, I remember reading about this.
The transcript highlights her revealing the shoe print evidence, showing a police sketch.
A big public move.
Huge. And Ramirez himself apparently saw this on TV. And what does he do? He throws his shoes off the Golden Gate Bridge.
Wow. Trying to destroy the evidence. It's audacious, but it shows he knew how significant that clue was. A desperate move to avoid getting caught.
But it wasn't enough. He heads back to the LA area, and then there's a failed break-in, followed by an attack where he actually tells a surviving victim, "I'm the Night Stalker."
He identified himself.
Yeah. It's almost unbelievable. So reckless. Why would he do that?
That is incredibly risky. Arrogant, maybe? Could suggest he wanted the notoriety, felt invincible, or maybe some psychological need to, claim ownership of it all.
Whatever the reason, it gave the police a direct, chilling confirmation.
A huge break.
And following that, they find a stolen car with his fingerprint. The transcript really emphasizes how they used new tech, combined it with his old arrest record for car theft.
Aha, so they connected the dots?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And finally identified him, Ricardo Ramirez. They release his mugshot, public enemy number one.
That's the turning point. The power of fingerprint tech, cross-referenced with records. It shows how forensic science was becoming so crucial.
And then, just 2 days later, it all comes to a head in this really remarkable way.
The capture?
Yeah. Alert citizens spot him at a convenience store. He tries to steal a car. It turns into this chaotic scene, people yelling, recognizing him from the mugshot.
Wow.
And the transcript describes bystanders just tackling him. They apprehended him, roughed him up a bit apparently, and held him until the police arrived.
Just citizens taking him down. That's extraordinary. Shows the level of fear and outrage he'd caused, the power of public awareness, really.
Absolutely, a kind of collective justice moment. So the transcript then moves to the trial. He's charged with this massive list. 13 murders, 5 attempted murders, 11 sexual assaults, 14 burglaries.
It's just a staggering list of crimes.
And he's found guilty on all counts, sentenced to death by gas chamber. Seems like the only possible legal end, given the sheer horror.
The verdict reflects the overwhelming evidence, for sure. The death sentence itself is debated, of course, but it was the legal consequence for the severity, the brutality of it all.
But the story has this one last, really bizarre twist.
Oh!
The transcript ends saying that while he was on death row, he actually got fan mail.
Fan mail for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And apparently he fell in love with one of the fans, married her in prison.
He got married on death row.
Yep. Before eventually dying of cancer.
It's just an unsettling, almost unbelievable final chapter.
That is deeply perplexing.
Yeah.
Attracting admirers, marrying while on death row for those crimes. It highlights some really complex, unsettling things about notoriety, maybe, human connection in the strangest, darkest places.
It definitely adds another layer of just unsettling complexity to an already horrific case.
For sure.
So the story of Richard Ramirez, it's dark, it's disturbing. So many chilling details in that transcript we went through. From that troubled youth, the exposure to violence,
Right.
to that cross-state reign of terror, and then this bizarre post-conviction life. It raises so many unsettling questions. What really stands out is that gradual yet devastating escalation. You see the potential impact of those early violent exposures, the slide into crime then, the horrific endpoint. It's a disturbing look at a mind gone terribly wrong.
Yeah, the potential consequences of early trauma, that lack of empathy,
Yeah.
it's stark.
Mm-hmm.
And the role of the media, but also just regular people recognizing him, that played such a huge part in his capture.
It did. The public fear, but also the public desire for justice, it was palpable.
And that final twist on death row definitely leaves you thinking.
Absolutely. This deep dive leaves us with a lot to consider, doesn't it? About violence, early experiences, psychological breakdown, how society responds. It forces you to grapple with some very dark aspects of human behavior.
That was today's Vibe Talks. Keep listening, keep thinking.